Hey Callista kids, welcome back to the Callista Quarantine Kitchen. Who would have thought that we would be back here? Sad that we're not back at school, but I actually wouldn't be able to be cooking with you at the moment anyway, so at least this way we get to, well, you get to see me. I don't get to see you, but I do get to see your photos when you post them. So as always, please make sure you have an adult supervising you while you're cooking. And tonight we are going to make cumin roasted pumpkin soup. Really delicious on a winter's day, nice and warming, and lots of health benefits that we'll talk about while we're cooking. So, our garden at school is reasonably bare at the moment. It's very, very cold up there and not much is growing. So, my delightful mother gave me a nice pumpkin from her gardener's garden. So I think this will be very yummy, and I'm going to show you how to chop it up. This is something that I think you probably need mum or dad or grandma or an adult to help you with. Pumpkin skin is really tough and hard to cut through. So by the magic of YouTube, we have the pumpkin cut. It was actually, the skin of the pumpkin was so thick that I couldn't do it myself. I had to get Stu to help me to cut through it. So you'll definitely need an adult to help you do that. So I've cut it in chunks and I'm just removing all the seeds and pulp into the compost. And then I'm going to I'm going to cut it into chunks to roast in the oven. Now you don't have to roast pumpkin to make pumpkin soup, but I really like roasting it because I feel that roasting it brings out the sweetness in the pumpkin, and I like to roast it with cumin seeds to give it more flavour. So I'm just going to take the skin off. Also, another job that needs to be very carefully done. I know you senior kids are probably well practiced at this. And as it's all going into soup and it's going to get blended up anyway, you do not need to be too pedantic about your chunks. Really, just however they come out. I'm going to pop them into an oven tray. So I will continue chopping them up, and then I'll come back and show you what I'm going to do with the cumin seeds. So the pumpkin's now kind of chopped up into big chunks. I'm going to give it a healthy drizzle of olive oil. And then I have whole cumin seeds. I'm going to put quite a few on. They're so delicious and they're really good for you. They have lots of health benefits. Apparently they aid digestion, they promote weight loss, they're very high in iron, they are potentially an anti-inflammatory. The science is still out on that one, but they're also really good for cholesterol and blood sugar. So for people who are having cholesterol problems or diabetes, this is a really good ingredient. And cumin seeds contain, I think, more iron than any other food given their size, so they're very good for you. So I'm going to pop that in the oven and I'm going to cook it until it looks ready. I'm not exactly sure how long that will be because I make this up as I go along, but I'll let you know. While my pumpkin is cooking in the oven, I'm going to prepare the rest of the vegetables that I'm going to put in the soup. This recipe is super versatile. Basically use whatever you have in the fridge. So tonight I'm using onions, potatoes, leek and celery. Kind of a pretty standard soup stock kind of combination. You could put carrot in it, you could put turnip or swede or parsnip in it. You can pretty well put anything you like in it, or just add a bit of complexity to the flavour. And again, because it's going to be put into a lot of stock and boiled for a long time until it becomes kind of mushy, it really doesn't matter how you cut it up. So really, really rough cutting is fine. and I'm going to throw it all into the pot at the same time. So I am just really roughly cutting it. I'm not peeling the potatoes. All the vitamin C in the potatoes is in the skin, and it's just going to break down and add nutrition to the soup. Celery is a bit of a funny ingredient. I'm not a big fan of celery, but celery adds an incredible flavour to anything that you make that is stock based, or any soup or stew or anything like that. It adds a flavour that no other vegetable can. So not a favourite of mine to eat by itself, but I always put it into soup. I think my bowl's a little bit full. Okay, now onions. You guys have seen me do this at school, but I'm just going to demonstrate quickly again. This is the best way not to cry when you're cutting an onion. And the reason that you don't cry when you cut it like this is because the onion stays together, and so the vapour doesn't actually escape and get into your eyes. So we're doing a rough cut, not a fine dice, so we're just going to go through once sideways, and then maybe 4 or 5 times like that. I've left the root on so that the onion stays together, but it's sliced through, and then when I slice this way, you just have a rough dice. Super easy, no crying. These ones I prepared before. This is a really efficient way to cut onions. Now this is all ready to go into the pot. And we'll start sweating it off. So maybe you'd like to meet me over here. I have my pot on the heat. It's on a high heat, and I've put some olive oil in it. So I'm going to add my onions first, because they didn't fit in the bowl. And I'm going to add all the other veg as well. And I'm just going to cook this. Saute it until everything kind of goes a bit soft. So you want the onions to become a bit translucent, and the leek. Potatoes, it doesn't really matter, but I like to fry everything off. I think it adds to the flavour. So you can see that the leek and the onion is now quite translucent. Everything's fried off nicely in the oil, and now I'm going to add the stock. So I'm using chicken stock, but if you were making this as a vegetarian or a vegan, you could use mackerel stock or veggie stock. It really doesn't matter. I'm going to put quite a lot of stock in because the pumpkin was quite big, and we ended up with 3 trays of pumpkin roasting in the oven. So I think I'm going to need quite a lot of liquid to make it into a soup rather than mash. So I'm putting in 2 litres of stock with this whole pumpkin, and then I'm going to bring it up to the boil, and then I'll turn it down and put a lid on it and cook that down for as long as the pumpkin takes to cook. So that's just all in there, and it will all cook down beautifully. So last night we roasted the pumpkin, and it took a little longer than we thought it was going to. So I am now going to blend my soup this morning. The pumpkin ended up taking around an hour to roast. and I've got the soup nice and hot and soft, and so this did cook down for an hour. Now I'm going to add the pumpkin. I'm hoping I've got enough liquid. And I might just cook that for about 5 or 10 minutes until the pumpkin heats up again. If you're making it at home and you're putting it straight in from the oven, you don't need to let it heat up. You can actually turn it off, let it cool down a little bit before you blend it, otherwise you might splash yourself with hot soup. So I've brought the pumpkin back up to temperature. I'm now going to add some salt and some pepper. And I'm also going to grate some fresh nutmeg into the soup. The cumin and the nutmeg will be, I think, very nice and warming together. I did taste this first to check how much seasoning it needed. My little nutmeg. Nutmeg like this is quite strong, so you probably don't need to use a huge amount, but the flavour is really, really complementary with pumpkin. Probably about half a nutmeg. And now I'm going to whiz it, so this will be very loud. So I've blended up the soup. It's super thick, which is okay because my family like it like this. And I will serve, when I serve it, I will serve it with a bit of cream. Now I'm actually going to package some of this up and take it up to Sonia for lunch, and I will add a little bit of video of Sonia enjoying the soup for lunch.
All right, hello, I'm very pleased and lucky to be the taster of the beautiful pumpkin and cumin soup. I suppose I don't know if you can see how beautiful Kylie made a lovely pattern, but let's go. Really rich, beautiful flavour, like, wow. Did you roast the pumpkin?
Mm-hmm.
That's why. Roasted pumpkin, yes. Beautiful, beautiful soup. That is really good.